Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about GURPS Everything, which was an attempt of mine to run a GURPS campaign in the 90s using the basic set and every single source book that I owned. Not the world books, not the ones that had particular settings in them, but all the source books, like the extensions on like Magic and Psionics. And I'll talk about that. This is an answer to a question from Wes9353 who asks, "Hey Uncle Tim, have you told us about the GURPS Everything campaign that you mentioned in the How Fallout Was Made special video? It would be a fun Friday video." I'll link the How Fallout Was Made special video below. I don't know if there's going to be a fun Friday video. I'm losing track because I am sometimes inserting things in the beginning of the queue and at the end. So I'm just throwing it out there. It's probably not going to be on a Friday. But neither was the Off the Rails tabletop RPG video. So let's talk about GURPS Everything. Let me start by talking about playing GURPS. I got introduced to it in graduate school, probably in the late 80s. And I ran all kinds of campaigns with my friends there. I did a high-tech space sci-fi campaign, and that one was pretty long running. I did a magic campaign. I did a superhero campaign. That is not the one mentioned in the Off the Rails video, which I'll link below. At Interplay, I did run a GURPS Conan campaign for a while. And by the way, the world book for GURPS Conan is amazing. So if you like the Conan universe and you just want like information on the geography and items and NPCs, that's a great world book, GURPS Conan. By the way, that's the one that when we were going to start Fallout, I had made a dungeon, just a 6-room dungeon, and ran a bunch of people through it in different ways. That was GURPS Conan. So there was one time I couldn't decide what I wanted to do next. I didn't know what GURPS campaign I wanted to run, and I was looking at all these source books. And I decided to use every single one, or more particularly, every book was available in play. Magic, psionics, high-tech, space, horror, pulp, time travel, even supers. None of the world books. These are just source books. These are like ways of extending GURPS into any setting you want. So not GURPS Conan, not GURPS War Against Cthulhu, which all these world books I had, but not those, just source books. Now the rules, I told the people who wanted to play that there were some rules. First of all, Earth was a low magic zone. So if you want to take magic, you're going to live with the low magic rules. I also said the tech level was somewhere between 7 and 8, let's say 7.5, which just comes into play if you're doing GURPS high tech or ultra tech. You have to know that if you want to pick an item that's 8 or higher, you're now using high tech or ultra tech rules. Why? Because if you take items or powers or whatever, I am going to require you to take a background and or a secret, which both of those cost points, to be able to do that thing, because it makes you very unusual. And there should be a background that supports why you have that ability there, and it may require a secret. If this is something that people would want to find you and hunt you down and possibly dissect you, then you probably, or it's something you have to keep secret because of the nature of the ability, then you should probably be buying a secret. And possibly a background to explain why you have it. And so some characters may need both. I basically told them, come talk to me beforehand, but do not share your character information with the other players. Make anything you want. Talk to me about what you're making, but do not tell the others. And I will get to why. So, the setting that I was going to be in was some rich old guy died. And the player characters are named in his will as possible inheritors. Maybe they're family members. Maybe they're just friends. Maybe they worked with him at some point in his career. For whatever reason, their name is in his will. So you're invited to attend the service, which is required. If you want to receive whatever he's bequeathing, you have to attend the service. And there was a service and then a will reading at his mansion. So all the players are invited. That's where the game will start. Now remember, the players know what they have, but they're not telling each other. At this point, I will apologize. My notes did not specify the players. I had my notes on setting up this campaign, and I remember how it played out. I don't exactly remember who played it. I thought there were 4 or 5 players. I could only remember 3. So I would tell you the 3 I remember. And I'll just use their real names because I don't remember the characters' names. So Rusty Buchert. Rusty played an FBI agent. He was there to investigate the rich guy's death. He was told to investigate it by his home office, but they didn't tell him why. All they would say is, well, there were mysterious circumstances. We just want this investigated. So he's like, okay. Now, the unknown part, what the other players didn't know about Rusty's character, was that he had been in the war. What war are we talking about? I don't know. Maybe I forget whether he made him old enough that he was in the Vietnam War or he was in some more recent skirmish. The U.S. has been in wars for pretty much all of its 200 and some year existence, so he picked one. But what he did was he had PTSD, which was a disadvantage, and he had war flashbacks, which meant when he was in a stressful situation, he had to make a will check, and if he missed out on that will check, he would re-experience trauma, imagine that enemies were all around him, and possibly pull his gun out and start shooting. That was Rusty's character, the FBI agent. And then Chris Taylor was playing a young man. No one knew why he was here. Was he family? If he was quite distant. But he was too young to have been a coworker. Nobody really knew why he was there, but he was in the will. Now, unknown to anybody, Chris, he had telekinetic powers. How? His background was, this was years after Skylab fell. When he was a kid, when Skylab fell, a piece had broken off and embedded in the top of his skull. They managed to cut it off, but they couldn't get the part that was embedded out safely. So they just left that in, and his skin grew on. Finally, his hair grew over it. But he's telekinetic now. If I remember correctly, he picked low power but high skill. So he couldn't pick up heavy things, but he was pretty good with his telekinesis. And then the other character, Scotty, played. Now, Scotty missed out on the first session. And when I made the campaign, I didn't want it just to be a few player characters at the will reading, so I made up a bunch of NPCs, each with their own background. Scotty joined us on session 2, and he wanted to play one of the characters, and he picked this young woman who was a relative of the dead man. Now, what's interesting about her is people would see, she seemed very quiet, and she kept to herself, and she was very furtive. She seemed to have very high-tech gadgets, like scanners and stuff, but she didn't talk to anyone else. Now, this is the unknown to everyone else. She thought she was a time traveler from the future who was investigating this. This was a time nexus point that was super important to her future timeline. In reality, she was completely insane. She was a delusional, insane maniac who had broken out of an asylum, saw in the paper something about the obituary of this old guy, and just showed up. So those are the 3 characters I remember from GURPS Everything. So here are the events that happened. So the first meeting, they all met for the service. So it was the player characters plus some extra NPCs. And remember, Scotty wasn't here in the first one. Think Clue, where there's about a half a dozen, maybe a little more, maybe 8 or 10 NPCs showing up for the service. Everybody's watching each other. They're wondering who each other is. They're wondering who's going to inherit anything, because this mansion they're at is huge. This guy was rich. A few of them noticed Scotty's character, and this is the first session, so Scotty wasn't playing her. She was an NPC. She seemed to be waving some metallic square device over the body when she went up to pay her respects. She then later seemed to be talking into another device, which looked like a metallic cylinder, and they're like, what's going on? Rusty immediately orders a background check on her from the local FBI office. He calls them up and goes, I need a background check on this woman. We play out some of this stuff. We only played for got an hour worth of play in because people were doing stuff with their characters. Session 2, so Scotty's now there playing her. During the service is finishing up, and there's going to be a dinner and then the will reading. A storm happens, a thunderstorm happens, a really bad one. Power goes out for a bit. Everybody goes crazy. You hear someone scream, furniture's being knocked over, dishes are smashing, gunfire. The lights come back on. One of the NPCs is dead. Not the one Scotty's playing. One of the NPCs is dead. I think Rusty calls a local hospital, tells them to send out some paramedics, gives him his name and badge number, and says this person's dead. Paramedics arrive, an ambulance arrives, paramedics get out. They check the body. They're confused. There's no apparent cause of death. The body has not been shot, and there's no blood. It's just a dead body lying on the floor. They take the body and go, saying they're going to some nearby hospital. Then Rusty and Chris decide they're going to check out Scotty's character's room while she's doing something else. They go up there and they search her room and they find those devices they saw her using. But the scanner was like a Walkman. The metal cylinder that she was talking into is just a pen. Rusty calls the office to find out if the background check has come in, and it's just come in, and it says, hey, if the name and description you gave us is correct, this is someone who's escaped from an asylum. So they go downstairs and they corner her. And she's like, oh no, that was a cover. You shouldn't have done that. You're gonna screw up the timeline. I'm from the future. My devices are made to look like devices from this era, so on cursory examinations, you could even cut them open and they'd have what looked like chips and wiring. But they're really advanced gadgets from the future. They believe her. Chris and Rusty decide to believe her and think she really is a time traveler, because why would anyone make an insane maniac? Scotty and I were laughing about it later because she really is an insane maniac. Anyway, Rusty calls the hospital to get an update. The hospital has no idea what he's talking about. They never sent paramedics. They never got his phone call. They never sent any paramedics, and certainly no body was delivered to the hospital. They're very confused. They go to the NPC's room in the mansion, and there's nothing in it. No clothes, nothing. No sign that person ever was here, because the body's gone and now their things are gone. While they were searching for the house, they find a secret staircase behind a bookshelf. It leads to a sub-basement. They go down there, and what do they find in the sub-basement? Some kind of laboratory where a crazed supercomputer is cranking along, running some existing program with a timer countdown saying when it will be finished with the decryption or translation. They're not really sure what it's doing. One of them uses their computer skill, which is like, They can't figure out what it's doing, other than the timer looks like it has less than a day left, and the input is some kind of acoustic input. There's literally, it came off a CD. It had already read the data, so they put the CD, it's just a regular CD in it. And what is it? What comes out of the speakers? Whale song. Humpback, blue whale, a variety of different species of whale song. That's what they're hearing. They're like, what's going on in this crazy game? They decide to get into a car. Rusty had his car. And they drive into town. They're going to go to that hospital to see if they can find any records. On the way there, they find the empty, overturned ambulance. No paramedics. No body. They go to the hospital, and the hospital confirms that isn't one of their ambulances. They didn't receive a phone call. Those aren't their paramedics. They don't know about the body. When they go back to the house, they get ambushed by people there who have guns, who were searching the house. And from what they overheard before they got attacked, they were searching for that secret lab. They knew about it. They managed to drive them off. How? Rusty pulls out his gun and starts shooting. He's really good with his gun. He made his stress check. So instead of shooting at imaginary foes, he's shooting at these bad guys. Chris uses his TK. Things are getting thrown at them, and he can't do heavy stuff. So like a vase will hit him in the head, or a newspaper will fly up and wrap around their head and blind them. Scotty pulls out a taser. He has a taser. I said she has a taser. And she starts tasing some of them. The bad guys back off. They flee. And the few people who got shot, either by Rusty's gun or the taser, they carry off. The three of them decide they better go back down into the lab. They go down there. The timer hits 0. Decode complete. What are the results? Is it a message? Is it a picture? Is it, a warning? What is it? No, it's a schematic. The whale songs held the key to making a schematic for a device. And they don't know what it is, but it includes, in addition to how things are supposed to be put together in the schematic, it includes a list of all the materials. Some of them are pretty advanced alloys, but all of them could be made today. But they don't know what this device is. This is where it ended. We didn't intend to end there, but the way things work, we never could get the people together again. We moved on to other things. I think we all bought Lynxes and started playing with Atari Lynxes. So that's where it ends. I did have a plan for continuing this, but we never finished after that. It was an interesting experiment to try to use every source book. And I also thought it was interesting that, except for Chris, all of them just basically used things that were in the basic set. Chris had telekinetics. There was no magic, no superpowers, no supernatural powers. Now, I wasn't necessarily restricted that way, but it was interesting to see the players restrict themselves that way. Anyway, that was my one and only attempt at GURPS Everything. Hope you liked it.